In a shocking statement on the 1st of July, Sony announced that in 2028, they will no longer be selling physical copies of PlayStation games. A post on the PlayStation blog detailed the upcoming changes, saying, "As consumer preferences in the broader entertainment industry continue to shift away from physical discs to digital, physical game disc production for all new games releasing on PlayStation consoles will be discontinued starting January 2028. Following this date, new games will be available on PlayStation Store and at retailers in digital formats only. This transition has no impact on games that are already released or will be releasing prior to January 2028 in disc format." Between raising prices of 6-year-old hardware, eye-watering prices expected for next-gen hardware, both PlayStation and Xbox closing multiple studios they acquired over the last decade, and now PlayStation is getting rid of physical copies of their games altogether, with Xbox almost surely following suit, there's really not a lot to get excited about in regards to upcoming hardware that both companies are preparing for. Oh, and to make matters worse, Sony literally just announced that they're removing 500 plus movies from people's libraries because of expiring licenses. These weren't movies that people rented, but bought that they will no longer have access to. That is, if the licensing agreement isn't updated by the 1st of September. It's possible that Sony may still make a deal with Studio Canal by September 1st, or even after, that would allow users to keep watching the content they bought. Ars Technica reports that a similar situation occurred back in 2023, when Sony said it would have to pull 1,318 seasons of Discovery shows from customers' libraries. A few weeks after its announcement, Sony said that it would not pull the content because it had updated its licensing arrangements with Discovery. Regardless of what happens in that case, it's a good reminder that anytime you purchase a digital copy of a game on any digital storefront, maybe say for GOG, you're literally just buying a license to access that content. There's not much protection for consumers for games being delisted or removed from access entirely. The Stop Killing Games movement is attempting to help laws get made to combat this, but so far hasn't gained much traction in the legal system. Racing games and licensed properties have long been the center of this issue. Games that use licensed vehicles, music, or properties quite frequently get delisted when their publishers refuse to pay the cost to extend those licenses once they run out. I'm still mourning the loss of access to games like Battlefield Middle-earth 2 and War in the North. Over the last few years, I had personally gone back to purchasing physical copies of games to make sure I had them in my collection because of the promise of backwards compatibility going forward. So, to hear this news today and the implication that the upcoming next generation of consoles will not have disk drives at all is actually quite infuriating as a customer. Especially because I'm sure that with the cost of components that are not expected to come down, apparently ever, if tech companies have anything to say about it, both Sony and Microsoft will probably try to sell me some overpriced disk drive later on to play my physical games. There's a number of issues with going all digital for both PlayStation and Xbox. Price control, people with slower internet speeds or data limits being forced to download or stream games, especially for those in more rural areas that don't have easy access to high-speed internet. And of course the big one, storage. Those SSDs you have to have for today's games aren't getting any cheaper. Interestingly, on the same day PlayStation dropped their news, there were hints that Xbox is working on a way to convert your physical games to digital, which would be a good solution to have for those with physical collections they want to bring forward. According to VGC via The Verge, when players insert a compatible Xbox disc and install and play their game as normal, they will then be granted a digital entitlement for the game as if it had been purchased on the Xbox Store instead. This means players can then remove the disc and continue to play the game as if it had been a digital purchase, with all the existing benefits that entails. I wouldn't be shocked to learn that PlayStation is working on a similar solution, but also, this is 2026, and more bad news is expected than good, so who the hell knows, really. Only time will tell if the outcry around physical media will force Sony's hand. Nintendo has come up with their own solution already by selling boxed copies of their games with little cartridges that sometimes don't even come with the game on them, but a license to download the game. So while you can currently sell or trade those, if at some point Nintendo decides to shutter or change that system, well, guess you'll have a cool souvenir to look at. Alongside game collecting, I've also gone back to collecting physical movies over the last couple years because of how expensive going to the movies has become, the constant delisting, and of course every subscription service offering a different selection and never knowing where to freaking look just to watch the movie I want to see. 4K releases of movies constantly sell out, so for Sony to act like there's not a legitimate demand for physical copies of games is patently ridiculous, even if digital is the preferred format. I'm sure after a couple of years of physical scarcity, the major publishers won't suddenly reverse course and then charge a premium for physical copies of games to entice collectors with artificial demand. There's really no good way to look at this change. Fewer options for consumers is never good, and the games industry is notoriously bad about preserving its own history. PlayStation and Xbox made a big deal about being more consumer-friendly with the current generation of consoles, so to see how quickly they're backtracking on that with the upcoming hardware is just another thing to add to the list of bad news coming out of both companies recently. PC gaming has been all digital for a number of years now, so you might be wondering if it really matters that we're going to get rid of physical copies of games on consoles, but at least there are certain options to make sure you hold on to your PC games forever, if you catch my drift. On consoles, that's really not possible. It's funny thinking back to just over a week ago when Steam announced the price of their upcoming Steam machine and everyone kind of scoffed at it, but I gotta be honest, with all the news circulating around PS6 and Project Helix, looking like a better and better option at that higher price point just to have access to the Steam store, the deals you get, and the aforementioned options you had to preserve games. If we're going the all-digital route, then both game makers and game players really need to make their voices heard about giving consumers more protections for their digital purchases. This is just another way that corporations are trying to take even more power away from consumers to line their own pockets.
Just because he's got a bad case of IBS does not mean he's a terrible roommate, all right?
I get the sense that I would get a lot of good feedback from him when I showed him my flapjacks.
Drama queen.